My wife stole $200, $0 from our joint account and lied about losing it in a bad investment. Then turned around and sued me for half of our property. Now I'm fighting to keep everything. And I just found out she's been secretly planning to file for divorce after I've given her full custody of our kids. I never thought I'd be the guy to catch his wife cheating, especially not after all these years. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you're least prepared. The craziest part, it all started with something as simple as a suspicious phone call and a few unexplained absences. I had noticed that Lisa, my wife, had been acting differently for a while, more irritable, secretive, constantly on her phone at odd hours. At first, I chalked it up to stress at work or maybe some health issues she didn't want to admit. But then, I started noticing small things that didn't add up. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I decided to check our joint bank account out of curiosity. I'd been meaning to do it for a while, just to see where our money was going. That's when I saw it 200. Zero missing. Gone just like that. I stared at the screen thinking I must have misread it. But no, the withdrawal was legitimate made a week ago. And the explanation from Lisa. She told me she lost it in a bad investment, that she'd been trying to fix it, but somehow I knew she was lying. The way she dodged my questions, her nervous glances, the way she suddenly became very interested in her phone whenever I came near, something was off. I started digging deeper. I pulled her phone records, and that's when I saw the calls, the texts, flirty, suggestive, sometimes downright explicit. The names weren't familiar at first, but then I recognized one Jake, a guy from her office. I couldn't believe it. I trusted her with my life, our kids, our future, and she was out there screwing around with some guy she barely knew. The worst part, she'd been lying about everything, and I had no idea how long this had been going on. I confronted her that night. I told her I knew about Jake, about the money, about everything. Her reaction, she threw a fit, started screaming about how I was paranoid, how I was mistrusting her because I was insecure. She called me all kinds of names: jealous, possessive, controlling. She even had the nerve to say that I was the one cheating, that I'd been distant lately, and that she needed comfort elsewhere. I couldn't believe the audacity. She looked me dead in the eye and lied through her teeth, saying she'd never done anything wrong, that I was imagining things. But I had the proof. It was all there. The emotional was brutal. I felt shock, then anger, then a deep, sinking sadness. How could she betray me like this? After everything we'd built, after all the years. I kept asking myself if I missed the signs, if I was blind to her lies. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and honestly furious. The betrayal wasn't just about the money or the affair. It was about the fact that she'd lied to my face, stolen from us, and then had the nerve to deny everything. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of confusion and rage, unsure of what I should do next. I spent nights lying awake, trying to piece everything together. I thought about my kids. What kind of example was she setting? How could she think she could get away with this? I knew I had to make a decision, but it wasn't easy. Should I forgive her? Should I fight for our marriage? Or was this the end of the line? I didn't have the answers yet, but I knew one thing: I couldn't let this go. Not without getting to the bottom of it. Not without making her pay for what she'd done. After that confrontation, my mind was a mess. I couldn't focus at work, couldn't sleep, and I kept replaying everything Lisa had said and done. Every time I thought about the money, the affair, her lies, I felt a burning anger rise inside me. It wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about the sense that I'd been played, used, and now left to pick up the pieces of a life I thought was stable. I started digging into our finances more, trying to understand exactly how much damage she'd done and what her real plan was. That's when I found out she'd been secretly planning to file for divorce. I got hold of some emails she'd sent to a lawyer. She was talking about protecting her interests, about getting full custody of the kids, and about how she was going to take everything I had. The emails were detailed, cold, calculated. It was like she'd been plotting this whole thing behind my back for months. I couldn't believe it. All the while, I thought we were just having typical marriage issues. Turns out she'd been planning her escape the entire time. I felt a mix of betrayal and rage. How could she do this? How could she betray me, steal our money, and then turn around and plan to take everything from me? I was furious, but I also felt helpless. I didn't want to lose my kids, but I also didn't want her to walk away with everything just because she decided she was unhappy. That's when I decided I had to fight back. Not just for my money or my reputation, but for my kids' future. I knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I started calling a lawyer the next day. I needed legal advice, but more than that, I needed to know how to protect myself and what my options were. As I sat in that office, I realized how deep this rabbit hole went. She'd been lying, cheating, stealing everything. And she had the nerve to accuse me of being the one at fault. I couldn't believe her audacity. I told my lawyer everything about the money, the affair, her plans for divorce. I wanted to make sure I was ready for whatever came next. Meanwhile, Lisa was still acting like everything was fine. She threw tantrums, called me paranoid, accused me of projecting my insecurities. She even went as far as to say I was the one cheating, that I'd been distant and unfaithful. I swear, her lies were so blatant I almost laughed, but I didn't. I stayed quiet and focused. I knew she was trying to gaslight me, trying to make me doubt myself. But I had the proof, and I was determined not to let her manipulate me anymore. All this chaos was taking a toll on me. I felt betrayed, angry, and exhausted. I couldn't believe I married someone who would do this to me and our family. I had always thought Lisa was the kind of woman who'd stand by her vows, who'd be loyal. Turns out she was just pretending. The woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone cold, calculating, and selfish. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs. Maybe I'd been blind, or maybe I just didn't want to see the truth. Either way, I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to save what was left of my life and make sure she didn't walk away with everything. I started gathering evidence, bank statements, emails, text messages. I wanted everything in case this went to court. I wasn't going down without a fight. I also started talking to my friends, asking for advice, trying to keep my head clear. But inside, I was crumbling. I kept replaying the happiest moments, the fights, the lies. I wondered if I'd ever trust anyone again. The betrayal was so deep, so personal, it felt like my entire world was collapsing. And all the while, Lisa was out there planning her next move, probably already imagining herself with half my assets and full custody of the kids. I couldn't let that happen. I knew I had to stay strong. I had to be smart. I couldn't afford to fall apart now. But honestly, I didn't know how much more of this I could take. The worst part, I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. That's what made it so damn hard. How do you fight someone you still care about, who's betrayed you so badly? I was about to find out. After hours of sleepless nights and endless thinking, I finally decided I had to take concrete action. I couldn't just sit around and hope everything would somehow fix itself. Lisa was still pretending everything was normal, but I knew better. Her sneaky little ways, the secret calls, the hidden texts, I'd seen enough. I needed to protect myself, my kids, and my future. So I hired a private investigator. I didn't want to believe she was capable of doing what she was doing, but I had to know the truth for sure. Within a week, the PI had gathered enough evidence, photos, videos, and a full report of her meetings with Jake, her affair partner. It was worse than I imagined. They'd been seeing each other for months, sneaking around, even going on trips together. The PI caught her in bed with him, which I never thought I'd see in my life. Seeing those images cut me deep. It was like a punch to the gut, realizing I'd been played for a fool. The woman I loved, the mother of my children, was out there screwing around and lying to my face all this time. I remember sitting in my car that night, staring at those pictures on my phone, feeling numb. I'd never been so betrayed in my life. The rage I felt was overwhelming, but underneath it was a profound sadness. How did I miss this? How did I not see that she was cheating, stealing, and plotting to leave me with nothing? I felt like I'd been blind, naive, and now I was paying the price. The trust I had in her was shattered beyond repair. I knew I couldn't stay silent anymore. The next step was to confront her again, this time with hard evidence. I arranged to meet her at our house, pretending everything was normal. When she got there, I laid the photos and videos out on the table. Her face went pale, and for a moment she looked genuinely stunned. Then her bitchy attitude kicked in. She started denying everything, calling me a liar, saying it was all a setup. She told me I was crazy, that I was paranoid, that I was just jealous because she was more successful than me. She even had the nerve to say she'd never actually cheated, just met Jake once or twice to discuss the kids, and I was blowing it all out of proportion. I lost it. I told her I wasn't stupid. I told her I had the proof and that I knew about her plans to divorce me and take everything. Her reaction. She scoffed, rolled her eyes, and said I was just jealous because she was more beautiful and smarter than me. That woman had a way of turning everything into a personal attack. She tried to gaslight me again, making me question myself. But I wasn't about to let her manipulate me anymore. I told her I was done, that I was filing for divorce, and I was going to fight for custody of the kids. That night, I sat alone in the dark, feeling a mix of anger, heartbreak, and determination. I knew this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about my life, my reputation, and my children's future. I'd been betrayed in every way possible, and now I had to pick up the pieces. I kept thinking about how she'd lied to my face, how she'd stolen from us, and how she was planning to walk away with everything. The betrayal cut so deep I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust anyone again. But I also knew I couldn't let her get away with it. I had to fight for myself and for my kids. I promised myself I wouldn't let her win, no matter what it took. The legal battle that followed was brutal. I never imagined I'd be in a position where I'd have to fight so hard just to keep what was mine. But Lisa had no intention of playing fair. She had her lawyer, slick and convincing, pushing all the right buttons, saying I was unstable, accusing me of being controlling, and claiming I was the one cheating all along. Meanwhile, she brought her own set of lies and half-truths to the table, trying to spin everything in her favor. I spent days gathering every piece of evidence I could find: bank statements, emails, text messages, and the videos from the pie. I wanted to prove her plans to leave, her affair with Jake, and her theft of the money. I also hired a financial expert to trace the missing $200, $0. It turned out she'd spent a big chunk of it on trips with Jake, shopping sprees, and who knows what else. The more I dug, the more I saw how calculated her moves were. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. The court hearings were intense. Lisa sat there, acting like the perfect victim, crying fake tears and accusing me of all sorts of things, saying I was abusive, controlling, and unfaithful. She even tried to turn the kids against me, saying I was an unfit father. But I had my own witnesses, my lawyer's evidence, and the truth on my side. I knew I had to stay strong, keep my emotions in check, and fight for what was rightfully mine. Every hearing felt like a war, and I knew Lisa was doing everything she could to win by any means necessary. Throughout this process, I also had to deal with the emotional fallout. Seeing my wife lie so effortlessly, trying to tear me down, was heartbreaking. But what hurt even more was realizing how much I'd loved her, how much I'd trusted her, only to find out she'd been planning her escape and betrayal all along. It was like my entire world was crumbling and I was just trying to hold on. I kept asking myself how she could do this to our family, how she could be so selfish, so manipulative. Every night I'd lie awake, wondering if I'd ever find peace again. But amid all the chaos, I also made a decision. I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. I pushed hard for full custody of the kids, knowing they deserved stability and honesty. I wanted to give them a safe environment away from her lies and schemes. I knew it wouldn't be easy. She had the resources, the charm, and the lying skills to make herself look innocent. But I had the truth, and I was determined to stand my ground. I wasn't going to let her win, not without a fight. The judge's decision was a relief, but it didn't erase the pain. I got custody, but the scars of betrayal ran deep. The money was divided, and Lisa was ordered to pay restitution for the stolen funds. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been robbed of my marriage, my trust, and my sense of security. I learned the hard way that the people you love can sometimes turn into strangers overnight. The betrayal taught me a harsh lesson about trust, greed, and deception. And even now, I wonder how I ever thought I knew her at all. Moving forward wasn't easy. After the court case, I threw myself into rebuilding my life, focused on the kids, on my work, on trying to forget the woman I thought I knew. But the emotional scars lingered. Every time I saw her in court or remembered her cold, calculating lies, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. I'd been by someone I loved deeply and it changed me. I started questioning everything: my judgment, my instincts, my capacity to trust again. Lisa, of course, didn't disappear quietly. She fought tooth and nail to keep her image clean, trying to paint herself as the victim. She moved out of the house, but she still tried to manipulate the situation in her favor. She sent nasty texts, accused me of stalking her, claimed I was the one cheating. The worst part: she still insisted she loved the kids more than anything and was only doing what was best for them. That lie made me sick. She was the one planning to take everything from us, and she had the nerve to act like she was the hero. I learned a lot through this whole nightmare, about greed, betrayal, and the importance of standing up for yourself. I also realized how fragile trust is and how easily it can be shattered. The hardest part was watching my children get caught in the middle. They saw her crying, heard her lies, and I worried they'd grow up thinking that dishonesty and betrayal were normal. I promised myself I'd do everything I could to shield them from the worst of it, to show them what integrity really looks like. In the aftermath, I started seeing a therapist. I needed to process what had happened and rebuild my confidence. It helped me realize that I wasn't alone, that many people go through similar heartbreaks and come out stronger. I also started focusing on myself more, working out, reconnecting with old friends, and trying to find joy in small things again. It was a long road, but I knew I had to keep moving for my sake and my kids. Looking back, I can say I learned some harsh lessons. Never ignore the signs of betrayal, no matter how much you love someone. Always keep an eye on your finances. People can surprise you in ways you never expected. And most importantly, don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, even when it feels like the whole world is against you. My wife's lies and schemes almost destroyed me, but I fought to keep what was mine. Now I'm trying to rebuild my life, slowly but surely. And if there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's that even in the darkest moments, you can find a way out, if you're willing to fight for it. I still have scars, but I also have strength I didn't know I had. And I hope that by sharing my story, someone else out there will realize they're not alone, and that they too can survive even the most devastating betrayals. Now looking back, I realize how much I've grown from all of this chaos. It's been a brutal ride, losing trust, fighting for my kids, trying to piece my life back together. But I've come out the other side with a clearer understanding of what really matters. I've learned that sometimes the people closest to you can turn out to be the biggest liars and cheaters, and that you have to be prepared to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours. I also learned that love can be a double-edged sword. Sometimes it blinds you to the truth, and other times it gives you the strength to face it head-on. The betrayal by Lisa was one of the hardest things I've ever gone through, but it also forced me to what I want from life and from the people I trust. I've become more cautious, yes, but also more aware. I no longer take things at face value. I've learned to listen to my gut, to read the signs, and to stand up for myself when needed. The experience has been a painful teacher, but a necessary one. Most importantly, I've realized that my children's happiness and stability come first. No matter how much I wish things were different, I can't undo what happened. All I can do is focus on giving them a safe, loving environment, something Lisa clearly could provide. I want them to grow up knowing that honesty, integrity, and loyalty are what truly matter. I want to be the father they can trust, the one who shows them that even in the darkest moments, there's a way to find light. So I've moved on, not because I've forgotten, but because I've chosen to forgive myself for what I couldn't see and to focus on building a better future. I've learned that revenge isn't worth it, that true strength lies in rising above the pain and choosing to do better. And I hope that sharing this story might help someone else realize they're not alone in their struggles, that it's okay to be hurt, but it's not okay to stay down. In the end, I've come to understand that life is unpredictable. People can surprise you, sometimes in terrible ways, sometimes in good ones. But the key is to keep going, to keep fighting for what's right, and to never lose sight of your own worth. I may have been betrayed, stolen from, and lied to, but I am still here. Stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. And that's what truly matters.